Today we have the former White House Communications Director and Senior Advisor to President Obama, the host of Pod Save America, and the author of the new book, Battling the Big Lie, Dan Pfieffer. Thanks so much for coming on.
Brian, thanks for having me.
So let's start off with the January 6 hearings. How effective do you think day one of the hearings were?
I think they were incredibly effective. They exceeded what were my pretty high expectations. I thought they did an amazing job. First, of keeping it quiet so that there was actual suspense and anticipation of what was going to be said. And then they delivered on that with really powerful video, powerful testimony, the videos of Trump officials, including Trump's daughter and son-in-law, in depositions, validating the idea that this was a big lie and a dangerous criminal conspiracy. I thought they did a very powerful job of telling the story, and they got people to tune in, which is the hardest thing to do in this media environment, is to get attention. And it looks like, from what we can see as of right now on Friday morning, that the ratings were quite high.
Well, I think Republicans would be proud. You'd mentioned keeping this all quiet. As we all know, their number one priority heading into the midterms is stopping any and all leaks. So they would be proud of the way the January 6th committee comported themselves. Who's the audience for these hearings? And did these hearings do what they needed to do for that audience?
I think a lot of people look at these hearings and say the audience are the people who believe the big lie. And can Benny Thompson and Liz Cheney convince these people that the election was legitimate? And I don't think that is true. That is truly possible, or actually the goal here. I think the goal is, and I think that even beyond the politics of this, the goal is to, for the historical record, tell the story of one of the most dangerous things that's ever happened to our democracy and warn about what is being planned going forward. So I think the audience is every American. It is particularly people who have disengaged from politics, perhaps, since 2020, who have thought maybe the threat of Trump or Trumpism has gone away because Trump himself has disappeared from the political public conversation. I think the audience is people who are sort of torn about, where they're going to go, and to remind people just how dangerous that day was, how dangerous and irresponsible the people behind that day were, and I thought they did a very good job of putting Trump at the center of that story.
What does success look like for the January 6th committee at the end of all of this?
I think it's really, I like my, as a political communications professional, my heart goes out to them, because basically the expectations are, is this going to save democracy?
Right.
Which seems like a hard test to meet. I think success is telling this story in a way that lots and lots of people hear it, remind them of it. And there's obviously a political component to this, right? And I think persuading the country about the dangers of this radical, extreme, conspiracy theory obsessed minority is incredibly important.
I know a bigger part of this committee isn't just for accountability. It's to prevent this from happening in the future. It's to show people the risks of giving Republicans power again. I mean, this is a party that still, to this day, breathlessly supports the guy who incited that insurrection on January 6th. With that said, people still want accountability, and it's going to be hard to convince people that Democrats are going to be able to be responsible stewards of our laws if those laws aren't enforced. So do you think that proving Trump's culpability without any action by the DOJ can actually have the opposite effect and just kind of highlight our weakness here and just kind of exacerbate feelings of helplessness in the face of such overt corruption?
Absolutely. Look, the committee has no control over what Merrick Garland is going to do.
Of course.
Joe Biden has no control over what Merrick Garland is going to do. So they're in this position where they can only go out there and make the best case and do the best job they can. And then it's going to depend on a decision by an attorney general operating independently, being advised by career prosecutors. I am not a lawyer. I'm not an expert in the kind of, in how you can make a seditious conspiracy charge stick. But the danger, if Trump and the people around him are not charged with a crime, then it is going to embolden everyone to do it. And think of the danger. We just have to think about how looming the danger of this happening again is. The Republican candidate for governor in Michigan was arrested in his house this week for participating in the insurrection. The Republican nominee for governor in Pennsylvania was participating in the insurrection and has pledged. He ran on the idea that he would give Pennsylvania's electoral votes to Donald Trump no matter what the voters said. This is happening right here. And it's being done by the same people. And if those people are not held accountable for what they did before, they will be emboldened to do it again.
You worked in the White House. You were a high-level advisor to Obama. I know that's not the Justice Department, but I still think you'll have better insight here than the rest of us. Do you think that the speed with which Merrick Garland and the DOJ are moving is too slow, or is it appropriate for what this investigation is?
My issue is not the speed, it's the decision at the end, right? No one knows how much investigating is being done, how many people they're talking to. He's going to, given just how much damage Trump did to the reputation of integrity and independence of the Justice Department, Garland clearly has to, and I think believes, and he talked about this in his confirmation process, wants to restore that. And that's obviously very important to President Biden as well. And this might be the most consequential decision the Department of Justice has ever made. He is being, if we're talking about Trump himself, Garland is going to have to make a decision about whether he is going to accept the recommendation of what I assume to be career prosecutors to indict for a crime the former president of the United States, who is the likely opponent of the sitting president of the United States, who also happens to be Merrick Garland's boss. And so you got to do it right. And if it takes a little extra time to do that, that is okay. So I think it's like we're all worried about speed. If the answer is no, I'm not going to do it, knowing that 3 weeks from now as opposed to 3 weeks ago it doesn't make that much of a difference to me. But if it takes a couple extra months and we get to what I believe to be the right and necessary decision, then I'm okay with that.
Now, this is going to be an impossible question to answer, and
okay,
also,
I'll try. Yes,
I also know your rule on predictions. So, with all of that said, do you think that a Trump prosecution by the DOJ is likely?
I just have no idea. I have no window into it. I don't know enough about the law that you'd have to make that decision. I think it is based on my not very clearly non-legal expertise. This seems like an open and shut case in the sense that just from what we heard in one night of hearings, Donald Trump was engaged along with many members of his party in a wide-ranging criminal conspiracy to overturn an election that included fraudulent electors. It included potential misuse of government resources, and then led to a violent riot at the Capitol that it resulted in the death of several individuals. Like that to me seems like, and I think there was always this, as I understand it, and whether it's the Justice Department or a local district attorney, you don't like to charge cases that you're unlikely to win, or there's a real chance you're going to lose. And there's a risk here that if you charge Trump and then he gets off, does that further embolden him? But I think, just from my perspective, unlawyer-like as it is, that charging him and losing is better than not charging. Right? There's a difference between asserting it's a crime and being unable to prove that crime beyond a shadow of a doubt than saying it wasn't a crime, which is, I think, what the interpretation of a no charge would be.
And by the way, that would have been the same case had Congress decided not to impeach him for a second time. I mean, people would be I think there's way more grace given to the Democrats for not getting the outcome that we wanted.
Yeah.
Just, given the fact that they tried at least. Like, did any of us really expect 16 Republicans, 17 Republicans to come on board to convict him? But at least they tried. I think we would have been way more pissed off had they done nothing and just sat there, and I think it would have been like the peak of fecklessness. So,
yeah, we used to say sometimes in the Obama White House, it's better to fight and lose than not fight.
Yeah. I think that like whole philosophy needs to just kind of be adopted by the entirety of the Democratic Party. I mean, that's going into the whole Mitch McConnell is our friend and the Republicans will have an epiphany. I think that whole mindset has done nothing but kind of hold us back. And I think people are finally waking up to it, but it's been a lot of wasted time thinking that these people are going to finally have some epiphany here. With that said, let's move forward to midterms. We look at the issues facing us in this upcoming midterm cycle. It's going to be gas prices and inflation, of course, but it's also abortion rights and guns, which, I'm sure I'm biased, but I believe are more dire. I mean, protecting a woman's bodily autonomy is a foundational issue. Preventing mass shootings so that your child doesn't get killed at school is a foundational issue. So do you think that these are going to be enough to overcome those bread and butter economic issues that Republicans are pushing right now?
Well, I don't necessarily accept the premise that we would lose on those bread and butter economic issues. I think that Rick Scott, who is leading the Republican efforts to elect senators, his plan is to raise taxes on 100 million Americans. He walked it back for 5 minutes and then readopted it again. In politics, you want to find issues that unite your base and divide theirs. And for us, that is bread and butter economic issues, because the Republican Party has this incredible, irreconcilable tension in it, which is its base is primarily working class voters, almost entirely white working class voters, but working class voters. But their policy agenda and their donor class are corporatist and plutocratic. And so finding ways to exploit that tension are good. But I think as we sit here today, this is a brutal political environment. Just this Friday morning, inflation numbers are going up, higher than people thought. There was some hope that it had peaked last month. Relatedly, gas prices are incredibly high. Grocery prices are high. Gas prices in summer always hurt more because there are families canceling trips and all of the like. And so this is really hard. I do think that if Democrats can make a case that Republicans are radical extremists who are out of touch on a whole host of issues, including abortion, guns, banning books, bullying, just telling teachers what they can say in the classroom. We can make that case. We have a fighting shot, because ultimately, to hold the Senate and win the most important governance races, we don't have to convince a single person who voted for Donald Trump to vote for a Democrat. We just have to get enough of the people who voted for Joe Biden in 2020 out. And so is that easy? Absolutely not. Is it possible? Yes. And I do think these hearings, the focus on the insurrection, past and future, and then the Supreme Court decisions that are coming, whether it's the overturning of Roe v. Wade, there's been, we're having a lot of conversations about gun safety and what kind of laws we can pass and all of that. But the Supreme Court's currently sitting on a decision that could flood the streets with concealed weapons if that were to happen.
New York and California.
The New York pistol and rifle. Yeah. And so that is a huge, looming. There are a lot of things out there that if we can overcome the right-wing messaging advantage that I write about in my book, then we have a chance to have if we have our argument heard. If we have our argument heard, we have a chance to pull this off. It would run against the odds in history, but it is possible.
A big part of why Republicans are successful, even despite these unpopular opinions, is that they have a media messaging machine at their disposal, unlike anything that we've ever had before, which brings me to your book. In it, you drill into the fact that Republicans have all of these tools at their disposal that really kind of exacerbate the asymmetry between the two parties. Do you think that having Facebook and Fox and Dan Bongino and Ben Shapiro and Newsmax, OAN will be able to compensate for these increasingly unpopular GOP opinions on abortion and guns and taxing the rich and coddling corporations, like you mentioned before? Will these outlets run cover effectively enough that the GOP can have a platform that only has 25 or 30% support and they'll still win?
It did in 2020. They did not win the election, but they came damn close to winning an election in a year where Donald Trump mishandled a pandemic that killed hundreds of thousands of Americans. And they almost won. The fact that the economy tanked under him, that he did literally everything you could possibly do wrong and came within 40,000 votes, runs against every norm, political science understanding, all of that. And that is in part because he got to, using this, I call it the MAGA megaphone, it's this network of right-wing messaging apparatuses, to alter reality for a bunch of people. And the other thing that does that very effectively they use their power to determine the four corners of the political conversation. If they want something, they want the electorate to focus on something. They use this for the caravan in 2018 to try to gin up immigration as an issue in the end. They think about this. The Republicans and the right wing were able to make crime a signature issue and then paint every single Democrat, including Joe Biden, as someone who supported defund the police. And that played a role in the election. It was an absolute role in the election. They spread, very effectively spread disinformation to Black voters and Latino voters, particularly Spanish language media in Florida, saying that the socialist regimes in Central America wanted Joe Biden to win. So there was like, I consider the current right-wing messaging apparatus, their media advantage, to be the most powerful weapon in American politics.
I know that you discuss this in the book as well, so I don't want to give away too much, but can you give a preview of what the left can do to match what the right's been able to do? Besides retweeting if you agree that Trump is going down.
Yeah. Yes. Well, so I think there are 3 things that we need to do. The first is we need to build up the progressive media ecosystem. We need more Brian Tyler Cohens, right? We need more people who are who are telling the progressive story on our terms to our voters. Like Democrats do not have a sufficient direct channel to our voters. If Republicans want to reach their voters, they can do it through Fox, they can do it through Ben Shapiro, they can do that. They don't have the ability to communicate directly with them. Like, we basically hand our message to the New York Times and CNN and hope they deliver it in good condition to voters, which is an insane way to run a party. So how do we do that? One, we need the progressive donor universe, the funders, to recognize the value in investing in progressive content, whether that is people with YouTube presences, whether that is media companies like Kirk Media, where Pod Save America works and I work. It is, there's been some good news on this. There has been a shift since 2020. There was just a report that some friends of mine I work with the Obama administration have raised enough money to buy a bunch of radio stations in Florida, including the very powerful conservative station in Miami. The second thing we have to do is we have to convince progressive, not donors, but just regular progressive media consumers, to support progressive media. And that could be subscribing to things, but also be something as simple as just subscribing to progressive YouTube channels, right? Like, I joke all the time in my ridiculous Political Experts React show to smash that subscribe button, but that matters. Like, this. The more people who smash your subscribe button, the more people the YouTube algorithm will show your content to. And so that matters. And the Republicans are very good at convincing their people to patronize their stuff. Related to that, we need Democratic leaders to nurture the progressive media ecosystem in the same way that Trump and the Republicans nurture the right-wing media ecosystem, which is why I was so excited when President Biden sat down with you to do that interview. Like, that gives you he lays hands on you, gives you credibility, gives you attention, builds up your audience, right? In addition to benefiting Biden. And that in nurturing that progressive media ecosystem helps. I felt the same way when he sat down with Heather Cox Richardson, right? Trump did that all the time. Most of his interviews were with Fox. He would get right-wing authors he would support their books. We need more Democrats to do that. Some do, not enough do. And the last thing is, and I think this is something where there's real potential that we could, narrowing this gap is going to take time, right? The Republicans have been doing this for decades, as I write in the book. But one thing I think we can do quickly is Democrats have this amazing grassroots army. Like, that is our comparative advantage against Republicans, is we had millions of people who will phone bank, text, knock doors, register voters. It's like, what if we turn those voters into messengers, where we thought at the end of every, and this is how I think you think about your audience, it's how we think about our audience, Crooked Media, is we don't think of them as the end of the process. We give them a message because we want them to go talk to everyone in their lives. But what if the party apparatus created, sort of incorporated that in our strategy, like in our volunteer recruitment? We gave them tools and do that content they can share with the 150, 200 people they have on average in their online network through Facebook, Instagram, contacts. And the DNC actually this week, or I guess it's this month, unveiled a program to start doing that. And it's really exciting, where we're going to turn every Democrat with a phone into someone who will carry our message. Like, you don't think Joe Biden's getting enough credit for all his good work in the economy? Here's some content you can post on Facebook. You can text to your uncle. You can do all of that to do that. Oh, are there rumors going around that Joe Biden supports X or Y that's not true? Here's the proof that he didn't. And now you can share that with the people in your network who think that. Like, if we can build up that apparatus, I think we have a real chance to narrow the gap and compete in the messaging wars we've been losing pretty handily for about 8 years now.
Yeah, I think like the reason that we get so upset when like positive messages about the White House aren't dispersed effectively is because we've kind of, like you mentioned, like handed our messaging apparatus over to the New York Times and Chuck Todd, and like these people are of course gonna like wrap this shit in like both sidesism to the end of the earth. And so it's kind of like it's a problem of our own making, but like we don't have to have we don't have to give them all that power. Like we have the opportunity, we have the ability to message ourselves. I mean, obviously, like you said, we need more progressive media outlets to be able to do that without having to be shamed not to both sides every goddamn issue there is. But like, but we don't have to imbue the New York Times and CNN and Chuck Todd with all of that power. Like we can just be the messages that we want to see.
It's not their job to get us elected to make the case against Trump. They have their own set of interests, their own cultures, and that's fine. They should do that, and they should certainly have no one should infringe on their constitutional right to do that. But it's just this has been driving me crazy for basically a decade. This idea that like campaigns that sit around and they think, and they all these smart people, and they do research and they test it. They come up with the perfect thing to say that we think can persuade someone somewhere to support our candidate. And then we take that thing and we hand it to someone else who may not even like us, and we're like, deliver that to them. And we know through polling that the person who's going to receive it doesn't trust the person we asked to deliver it, because trust in mainstream media. So it's like, no one would run a business that way, right? Like you would never have someone who is kind of a competitor of yours deliver your product for you, right? Like Domino's is not hiring Papa John's to deliver their pizzas, right? So like we just have to be smarter about it. And it's too many in the party, I think, have been this is changing, but have been unwilling to break with the old model that existed out of necessity, pre-internet, pre-social media, to do something different. And we have to get out of our comfort zone, or we're going to lose going forward.
Yeah, and it's at our own peril, because it's not like we don't know that these outlets are going to both sides of everything. It's not like we don't know that the New York Times ran God knows how many cover stories about Hillary's emails and Benghazi, and kind of did all this messaging that, did all the messaging that Republicans wanted them to do. So, it's at our own peril, but I think your point is exactly spot on. You kind of stepped on how I wanted to end this, which was to ask you, no one has the rhetorical genius that you do when it comes to subscribe button smashing. So maybe you can do what you do best and give the people listening and watching to this a quick call to action here as we end this.
Well, based on your subscriber numbers versus the Crooked Media ones, you are obviously much better at it than I am. And my trick always is to if I was doing it for myself, I would do it in a very self-effacing, self-derogatory way, because I personally feel ridiculous asking people to subscribe to my YouTube channel, but I do not feel ridiculous asking people to subscribe to your YouTube channel, because I have such respect and admiration for the work you are doing. It is so important that you were out there and you're working your ass off, thinking of ways to spread the message. You're doing it on multiple platforms on a daily basis. And so we absolutely need everyone listening to this, everyone watching this, to support Brian, to smash that subscribe button, because if you this is just, I don't think enough people understand how this works, which is, YouTube decides what to show people, and they make that decision based on how much engagement and how many people view the previous content. So the more people that watch what you do, subscribe to what you do, if they smash that subscribe button, your message will spread farther and more people will see it. And that is ultimately what is good for the Democrats and what is good for democracy. So, as I would say, smash that subscribe button.
There you go. Thank you. Thank you so much. And Dan, thank you for taking the time. For anyone watching or listening, the book is Battling the Big Lie. It is an excellent read. I don't have a ton of time to read books these days, but I flew through this one. It was just phenomenally done. You can also hear more from Dan, obviously, on Pod Save America. So, Dan, thanks so much for taking the time.
Thank you, Brian. Appreciate it.